Greetings. Welcome to the
Hello.
Captive Desk.
Hello.
Please join me in welcoming Mike to the Captive Desk. You may also know him as Speed. Mike hosts the Answers in Atheism channel. There are over 800 videos there with over 115,000 views, where he reviews genetics, molecular biology, creationists, and philosophy of the mind. Answers in Atheism may also have content like secular recovery, philosophy of life, epistemology, and more. But mostly, he talks about molecular biology, evolution, and genetics. Mike is often joined by his co-host, Scott Duke, and he frequently has other guests on to join the discussions too. Mike and Scott both celebrated another trip around the sun this week. Happy birthday, guys. Mike, thanks for stopping by today.
Okay. That was the counting the days thing. A lot of people thought that was our annual birthday, but it was not. So it wasn't a trip all the way around the sun. It was only, I turned 26,400. So I have a birthday every time I cross 100 days. So anyway, hey, good to be here.
And we could have a long discussion about Mike's channel, but that's for another day. Please check out Mike's channel and subscribe to catch his future videos. Today, though, Mike is here to talk about secular Buddhism. So, Mike, let's get right into it.
Okay.
What is secular Buddhism to you?
Yeah. So I started using that adjective secular to make very, very sure that nobody got confused about belief in reincarnation and the Hollywood Buddhist idea of karma, which is that if you do bad things will come back to you, or somehow you've created a curse in the universe, specifying that there is absolutely nothing supernatural that is believed in Buddhism. And it is the accusation by Buddhists that do believe in those kinds of things. And these Buddhists reside primarily in California, I think. That's why I call them Hollywood Buddhists. The charge they always level against me is that, that's only psychological Buddhism. So we're talking about psychology. We're not talking about some mystical aspect of the universe. So that's why it's secular, and I think that's real important. And it goes a little bit further than that, but we could make it a little bit further into that. And the reason it goes further into that is because of dogma. The problem with dogma, basically. So anyway, I think that covers that.
Well, what led you?
Huh?
I was going to ask you about the woo. That's one of my questions. So let's just talk about it. So let's cover the woo. So there is some supernatural things in Buddhism.
Yeah.
But secular Buddhism is separate, that you do not have any of your supernatural beliefs involved in it. So like you already said, you don't have the reincarnation and stuff like that.
Yeah. Strict naturalism, basically. And I'm not entirely sure, because one real important thing here is I don't know a whole lot about Eastern Buddhism, the dogma or the documents of Eastern Buddhism. I started reading those when I was a very young man, and I abandoned them for a very specific reason. And that was that it wasn't my path, and it just became a confusion of myth and dogma, and it was very hard to decipher what I needed to decipher from. So I would make the claim that people that know a lot about Buddhists probably aren't really Buddhists, because you don't do Buddhism that way, by reading some ancient document or whatever. But anyway, that's an opinion or an attitude. So,
what exactly did you read to get your secular Buddhism information?
Yeah, the beginning. So my very best friend and soulmate when I was like in sixth and seventh grade, name was Mac or Danny, and he was the intellectual. He was the philosopher and the soft science intellectual in the group of two. And we would read just voraciously, and I would read science, and he would read the soft sciences. Well, he got into existentialism and metaphysics and all of that around seventh grade, and then he got me interested in it all. And we kind of went through a journey for the next 2 or 3 years, which left me at 15 a little bit shell shocked from thinking too much about life, the universe, and everything. And I had sort of lost meaning in my life, and I became this extreme skeptic. And it he then his older brother, I think, actually brought us into the Eastern way of thinking and the whole hippie movement, and introduced me to a book by Wilson Watts, or I think Ellen Watts, and it was called Beyond Theology. I think it was written the same year that we actually read it. And that book gave me my first spiritual or mystical experience. Reading that book and doing some of the going through some of the thought games that he was proposing in the book, somehow coincided with what I was going through in my personal life, which was not pretty and not good. When I was 15, uh, I was pretty much ready to throw in the towel. I was one of those teenagers that very well could have suicided. And it just sent me in an entirely different direction, and that direction has lasted my entire life. It basically happened right before my 15th birthday, December 24th at about 9:30 p.m. And for the next 3 days, I had what I would call a mystical experience. And mind you, there were no drugs or alcohol involved at all in this experience. I think the only thing I'd eaten that night is cookies, Christmas cookies. So,
So
and
was it? So it was very profound. Then I mean, it was
it
it,
was,
it impacted you deeply. Then.
yeah, the impact was lifelong. I still remember it. It was as if it was snowing, of course, over in Minnesota, northern Minnesota, and it was as if the entire world was on white fire, like lit up on fire, and everything around me was. And it had a remarkable sensation of looking at all the problems I was having in my life, with my father particularly, my family, and looking at it as if I was standing outside of it, looking at it, and it was it wasn't meaningless, but it had no power over me. The All the tragedy that I felt, or the lack of meaning, or all the stuff that was going on in my life, no longer had any power over me at all. I was at peace entirely with exactly what was happening in my life at that time, and it was profound. And it lasted about 3 days, and that launched the search, the trying to hold it, trying to get it again, trying to bring it back. And that brought me through the psychedelic 60s, with LSD and all of that stuff. So that was part of the show. And of course, I read, then I started reading the books and searching and looking and trying to get it back, because the feeling sort of fades after about 3 days if you don't nurture it. So, yeah.
And a lot of people that have had experiences are similar. They want to have it again. They search and they search, and maybe searching isn't how it comes about, huh?
No,
Maybe
it's exactly
it
the
just comes
opposite.
about. Yeah.
It's the opposite. It's like trying to grasp a wisp of smoke. It keeps darting away from you. You can't grab it.
Hmm.
And and I think that's where you start getting into. You get really obsessed with the Dharma and reading. And of course, I read all of Ellen Watts's books. That around until he died. Uh, he died, I think, in 1976, trying to bring it back.
So did you ever try the California Buddhism?
No, no. For some reason, even in my youth, I was a strict naturalist and a physicalist. I just didn't believe in anything other than that what we could reveal with science and physics. And I've gotten even worse in the last 20 years. So I'm even a harder naturalist and physicalist. So, to the point where I'm fighting with other atheists about philosophy and what I believe.
It's
No, I
okay
never
to
had any conversation.
it's okay to disagree.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it's okay for them to be wrong.
That's right.
I don't have a problem with that.
It's not our fault they're all wrong. You
I will
know.
defend their right to be wrong. Anyway, uh, putting putting a different spin on it. But
And
the '60s were filled with that, right? Because the Beatles went over to India, of course, and there was Tim Leary and Baba Ram Das. Richard Alpert, his first name was, changed it to Baba Ram Das, and books came out, and and we were all immersed in that culture. But most of my peers were going after that that woo based, Hollywood Buddhism. It's kind of where they were going. And for me, it was never a question of rejecting that or finding a different path. And I believe thoroughly after reading all of Ellen Watts's books that he was the same, that he had no woo base at all to what he believed in. And there are Ellen Watts enthusiasts today that will really fight me on that and just absolutely insist that he believed in some weird supernatural thing. And it's like, no, I didn't find that in any of his writing.
and Buddhism is not exempt from having extremists either. You've got
Oh
groups like
no.
969 that run around that
Right.
I don't think the Buddha would be very happy with. So they're not
Yeah.
immune from having trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, a real stunning thing happened in about 2008, 2010. I read a book called Embodied Mind about consciousness by Evan Thompson. And oh, and there's another one by Frank Varela. I can't remember the name of it. Varela and Thompson and a few others. But anyway, they explain karma in a very different way, and said that no, this deal about that you add up bad things or good things and then it comes back to you. That's not what karma is about at all. Breaking the karmic cycle or breaking the wheel of karma means being released from the patterns that have uh, basically taken over your life. Like we always end up going out with, like for me, I always ended up marrying the same girl over and over again, right? or dating the same girl over and over again, and it's like, why do I keep dating this one particular problem type of person? And it's like, oh well, that's my karma. That's the problem. Is not them, it's me. It's in me. So it's my karma, and I have to break that cycle. So karma is defined as habit. It's not defined as something that lays around after you die and comes back and haunts your next life or whatever. And reincarnation, rebirth is, we're reborn every day when we open our eyes in the morning. To tell you the truth. Am I
I've
being
got
too wordy?
no. I
Okay.
I have Sadhguru's book on karma, and yeah, Sadhguru. I know a lot of people have different opinions about him, but I like him. So he explains karma as akin to a soul. It's
Okay.
it's who you are.
Yeah.
It's everything you've ever done, all your experiences and your emotions and everything. And you can change your karma because, like you said, if you're having a bad day, you can turn it around and you can have a good day, and you
Yeah.
can change the karma of the moment. And yeah, so it's everybody thinks it's a hex. Oh, the bad person's going to get theirs, and it's like, well, the bad person has to deal with carrying that bad karma.
Yeah.
And like you said, they're not going to escape it. if they keep pursuing it day in and day out. So that's their own problem. But it's the I guess the psychological aspect of it, of they have to look in the mirror and deal with it.
Yeah, there was this computer contract that I had downtown Minneapolis, and I had a horrible commute every day. So I'm 35W and just driving traffic. And I noticed something back then, and I got this idea. Like, if I saw somebody trying to get in, and if I would brake very carefully and give them a lot of space so they could get in, or if I would do some other nice thing for a person on the road on the way to work, I felt as if a karmic wave blew out from what I did and arrived at work before I got there, because everybody was in a good mood when I got there. And the reality is that I was in a good mood when I got there. And I saw everything, through a different lens, right? So what I do affects how everybody else looks to me, how they look like they're doing. And that was an important realization. And of course, I knew
it's when you can just do this, no matter what. You can just
right, yeah, yeah. I knew. I mean, and some people might take that and say, "Oh my God, there are karmic waves in the universe or something, that runs in the, and that's why it happens." Like, okay, if you want to believe that crap, go ahead. But it keeps you from further insights in that. Okay, if me doing something nice for somebody affects somebody, then that tells me something far deeper about my life that I need to know, and that's going to extend to a lot of other ideas, and that's where we get into the what do they call it, the 6 things of Buddhism, which I don't even know that simple dogma, but the basically the way of living that Buddhism prescribes. It prescribes sort of a way of life, and that's one of them. Basically, this doing good things for others. Why would you do that in a universe that's fairly naturalistic? Well, because everything changes. Like, a light shines on the world, and it's a pleasant light. And if you do something evil or you do something horrendously bad to somebody, a darkness comes over the world for you, for your perception. And it's not a pleasant darkness, right? So erring on the side of the lightness is a path that you have to choose. So, does that make sense?
Well,
Go ahead.
No, it makes sense to me.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions along the way, though,
Yeah.
put them in the comments, and we'll take a look at the end.
Yeah.
But
If I have
that's going along with like the eightfold path. Speaking of a path,
eightfold path, not the
right,
sixfold.
where you have your right views and wrong views.
Yeah.
And
why would you do that in a secular universe, right?
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Right resolve or intention.
Yeah.
Right speech. In other words, if you lie, you own it.
Yeah.
Right conduct. Again, a lot of these things have to do with your karma. No killing or injuring. If you do, it's on you. And that's some really bad karma. I guess one of the worst things you can do is to wish ill on others.
Yeah.
And I've been guilty of that a few times. And it says right in my book, it's like, oh, that's some bad karma. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I can feel it. It's you can really feel it when, at the moment you can have the emotion and wish something bad on somebody. But later, you'll think about it and you're like, I really shouldn't do that, and it does weigh on you. And your right effort. Yeah, right effort, right mindfulness, and right samadhi.
samadhi.
which is samadhi. That's practicing the 4 stages, doing your meditation and everything. So, speaking of, do you meditate?
I do as often as I can, and I'm getting better at it, but I'm really bad at it because of the way my mind works. My mind is like, well, anybody that claims to have ADHD and that has taken a TOVA test and found out that you have a high level of impulsivity or ADHD, your mind is like darting all over the place, right? And so it's very difficult for me to meditate. But I have made some progress in the last 16 years, particularly in the last 6 months or so, where I've been able to focus more. I meditate and I pray, which requires a lot of unpacking for a hard atheist and hard naturalist. But the two are very closely related.
When they do studies, they're really related as far as the brain goes.
Yeah.
Praying, meditating, all those things have a similar effect to the brain. So they are alike in many ways.
Yeah, I think the most important thing to understand about this psychological Buddhism basically is that these mystical experiences, or like a born again experience that a lot of Jesus people have, there's something that happens to human beings. There's something in our minds that's just right poised to happen, and it has other words like nervous breakdown or meltdown or whatever. But there are times of extreme stress in our lives when all of a sudden a totally different way of looking at things hits us so quickly that we are launched into this kind of thinking that is, for some people, it's really an unpleasant feeling. I had a woman that had one for like 6 weeks, and she checked herself into a hospital basically because it was very, very uncomfortable thinking like this. But something happens to your brain, and they have been able to. There are researchers that have actually scanned people, and they have theories about what happens to your brain. And it's sort of a meltdown in the part of your brain that creates your sense of self and position in the universe. So you may suddenly lose your grounding, like you feel like you're in one spot, right? That sort of thing. And it's definitely, neuroscience will eventually learn a great deal more about these things. In fact, they've been able to do it to people by putting extremely powerful magnets right here on the sides of their head. So, I mean, it's physical, right? There's a state of mind. And then meditating and prayer it inclines you to that state of mind. It leans you into it. I mean, it doesn't, it isn't a grand mal spiritual experience, but it gives you a little bit of relief, and that suddenly your mind starts operating a little bit differently. Like if you pray for guidance, and then you forget about your problem and you forget about the prayer and you walk around for 3 days, about a day or two later, all of a sudden something will happen. You're like, oh my God, my prayer's been answered. My question's been answered. And now I know which way to go, And I've had that happen over and over again. If you carefully frame a problem or some emotional conflict, and you do this, I need guidance, or I need help with this, right? And you do this ritual, and you do it with your hands, and then you go on, and within 3 days, it's still in your brain floating around there, that problem, right? Something will happen. You'll see some pattern or something in somebody else's life, and you'll get an entirely different perspective on your problem. And oftentimes, you'll be able to see your interpersonal problem from the point of view of the person that you have a problem with. And that is immense when you can see that other person's point of view of you and your problem. And suddenly all your resentment drains away, and you're like, wow, I was a bit of an asshole, and I had a part in this problem. And it's like, okay, I owe somebody an apology. And that's cool. That's a really remarkable experience.
And yeah, you said something about hands in the air or whatever. I just saw something that posturing releases chemicals in your brain
Yeah.
that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
So when you see believers, holding their arms up or out or any of that posturing,
Yeah.
that actually, it actually releases something in the brain and makes you
Yeah.
feel good.
Yeah. It sort of opens you up, and
Hmm.
does something physically. Well, and the other thing is the way human beings think. Uh, okay, this is a theory in neuroscience. The way they think is an exaptation of planning movement. So thinking is movement without muscles being involved. It's a different part of your brain, that where you're moving concepts around instead of planning to, pick up the remote or whatever. And so when you move, you are guiding your thinking at the same time. And you're doing it in a more full body way, and it really does make a difference. So I tell, when people are really stressed out, I tell them, hey, move your arms, open, do this, do these something. What do they call that form of yoga, or not yoga, but that those real
It
slow karate movements that they do in
that's
the
yeah. There's forms of yoga that do that too.
yeah
I call it posturing. It's
yeah
or posing, or
yeah
you assume certain positions and you hold them, like balancing on one foot,
yeah
and it releases things, and it actually does. It's not just like we were saying, woo. There's actual things that do happen in the brain. Now, it doesn't mean you're having, some mystical experience or anything. It's just it, but has been known for a long time that when you do these things, it does do something, and it's being proven out. So what it is exactly
yeah.
and why, that's
Well, an interesting thing is if you watch two dogs that are kind of either play fighting or fighting a little bit, and then one of them will just roll over and stick his paws up, right? And when the dog does that, when he says, "Okay, I've had it. I give up. I don't have a point anymore in this argument." When he does that, all of his adrenaline starts to settle down, and the whole flight or fight reaction starts settling down in that individual. And so it's something I think that all mammals share. This being able to open up. Because when you go like that, your midsection is vulnerable. They can punch you.
mhm.
But when you do that, it's going to set off certain endorphins and hormones in your mind that's going to change the state of you. And I think that's important. So, like I
And
say, I'm
so,
a hard physicalist. I basically explain all of this with neuroscience. So,
well, and speaking strictly as a naturalist, do you think the Buddha was a real person?
I think there may have been a historical prince or whatever that wrote some things, and I have no idea when, but I think it was just somebody very wise, and there was uh, some indication from Ellen Watts talked about this, that Jesus and this person met or were basically that parts of Christianity were borrowing from that tradition, or Jesus and some offshoot of.
Oops. It's like we dropped Mike here. There he is.
Yeah, my, so,
Welcome back.
that was weird. It just said something went wrong. Something went wrong.
Oh,
But
it's the demons. It's
it's the demons, yeah. Well,
it's the
Scott turned
demons.
666 yesterday, so I think
Oh
that
man.
yeah,
Oh gee.
666 days of
I got to put
business.
out an extra offering for Bigfoot tonight.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Well, so what the hell was I saying before the internet
yeah, I was
interrupt?
just yeah, I was just I'm stumped too.
God sent Mike back to us, James.
It'll come back. It'll come back. Anyway,
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I just got a quick thing to read, and let me know what you think of it. Supposedly, these were the Buddha's last words. And we're talking about Siddhartha. We're not talking about other Buddhas. We're talking about the Buddha that refers to Siddhartha. Supposedly, his last words were, "Then the Buddha addressed all the monks once more. And these were the very last words he spoke. Behold, O monks, this is my last advice to you. All component things in the world are changeable. They are not lasting."
Yeah,
What do you
that
think?
is.
Is
Yeah, that
everything
is
changing? Is
right.
everybody changeable?
Yes, if they choose to be, they have to open their arms to be right. You have to open up to it before it happens. But everything changing when you start looking at it through your life, uh, you start to see how often your molecules have been replaced and how often yourself has changed and your ideas have changed, and you sort of start to wonder, well, who is this person that is Mike, you know? And then the next step is wondering, well, does it matter? You know, does this selfhood matter? And so Buddhism is very much about, in whatever way you can, to give up the idea of me, or self. And when you do that, why would you do that? Well, you end up happier overall. You end up with fewer problems, fewer impediments. You travel through life in a lighter manner, kicking over less tree steps, which is.
And there's also the misunderstanding that Buddhism only cares about the self. And that's not true. It cares about everybody and
Yeah,
their selves as well, right? Often you hear that, oh, Buddhists are selfish, they only care about themselves.
yeah,
And that's not the broad idea of it.
yeah. Being an old man, I had this nostalgia for my youth, and one of the things that really kicked that nostalgia is our parents used to get together and have these drunken parties, and all of us kids would be out playing on the farm, and we'd be running through the hay barn and through the fields and stuff, and there was that smell of fresh cut green hay, and there were these, boys and girls that I just loved playing with and knew really well, and we had a lot of fun, and it was this longing for that, which I will never have again, right? Which I will never feel again. For one thing, I lost my sense of smell, so I'll never smell anything again. I'll never smell green hay like that. And then I feel like, oh my God, that's just so tragic for me, right? But then I think there's all kinds of children out there running through the hay right now and playing with each other in backyards and ball games and whatever. There's millions of them, billions of them out there playing right now. Why do I want to be? Why does it have to be something I am experiencing? Why am I not just as pleased by what another person is experiencing? Because when I experienced something, like back then when I was doing that, it was fleeting and fast. And and I probably was, even then, wasn't paying attention as much as I should. So there's a shallowness to our experience, and then there's a greediness to it where I want to have the fun. I want to be having fun, right? But no, what if you're okay with there just being fun somewhere in the universe, somebody having fun, right? And then all of a sudden yourself is gone, yourself is no longer a player in that. And then you're okay to lay down on that final pillow and take your last breath because it's going to keep going on. You know? The fun is not going to end. The party goes on, basically. Like,
That's something I asked Christians. I said, if Jesus came back tomorrow and there was peace in the world, there was no hungry people, but there wasn't a Christian to be found, would he be mad?
yeah, he probably. I think like if he was indeed influenced by Buddhists, he would say, "This worked out just the way I wanted it to."
Yeah, and that was yeah, something I wanted to touch on. There is evidence because of some of the things. Now, again, you have to take it for what it is. Who said what? Who knows?
Yeah,
But there are some leanings in things that Jesus said and his supposed lost years that maybe he did travel east, or there's also evidence that Buddhism was also in Judea because people traded and traveled and everything. So, yeah, those ideas could have been there at the
yeah,
time of Jesus. So,
yeah. That's what Ellen Watts was referring to when he was talking about that connection between Christ and Buddhism. That there were a lot of things about a lot of those myths in the Bible that track to some of the Eastern thinking because they had a lot of trade between those regions and there's a lot of interchange of ideas. One of my favorites is the Adam and Eve in the Garden of Evil, or the Garden Adam and Eve in paradise, and they see the tree of knowledge or whatever, knowledge of good and evil, knowledge of death, and all that. And that Ellen Watts compared to basically when you eat that fruit, what's happening is humans evolve to have this mind where we not only know what our surroundings are, but we know what may happen in the future, and suddenly we realize that we're going to die someday because we're changing, right? And that the burden of that knowledge is what created this entire all the turmoil and sin and negativity in your life because you have a burden of knowing that you only have a short time, right? That sort of thing. So that was the eating of the apple, and it's basically the evolution of this increased conceptual rationality, where humans can suddenly start thinking about themselves. you know? And that made a lot of sense. And he does that with a lot of Christian myths. He really makes fun of Christianity and also reveres it in a way because he calls it the ultimate game. He said, if you're going to play a game in your head, what game could be more serious than one where you're either going to spend your eternal life in heaven or you're going to burn in hell and torment forever? I mean, he said this game has high stakes. Like, if you're going to play a game, so and his conception of arriving at the golden gates and dying and going up, and going up before God to be judged. Because you get up there and there's this like incredibly high throne that's like a light year tall, and God is this imposing figure with curly gray hair, and he's got a grim look on his face, and he looks down at you, and you're ready to be judged, and he all of a sudden he starts this enormous belly laugh, slaps you on the back, and says, "We were just kidding. It was just a game. Not serious. Don't take it seriously."
don't take it so seriously.
Imagine the relief, in that situation. We're just kidding.
I think it was the moment in both my boys' childhood when they came to me and they were upset, and I remember it back when I was a young lad myself. When you have that thought one day, maybe a grandparent or a pet dies, and all of a sudden you get upset, and you're like, "Mom, am I gonna die someday?"
They picked the apple.
That's like that's that innocence lost. You know what I mean? And you can't go back once you have that moment.
Yeah, I was in the South Grove suburb of Montgomery, Minnesota, when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I was sitting on a curb, and I sat there, I swear, for 3 hours because I just realized I was going to die, and I was dealing with it. I remember exactly where I was, and my twins. I remember I had to lie to them because they were up for 3 nights, just worried over this death thing when they were like 4, 5, 6 years old. And I had to lie to them and tell them, well, modern technology being what it is, they're probably going to eliminate death by the time you get old anyway. So, and then they said, okay, and then went to bed. And that was the end of it. But yeah, that's the moment of eating the apple. That's
It
basically
is. Yeah.
yeah. I kind of like that. We can
And
sell those Christian myths and make some use of them, right?
do you follow any dietary practices out of Buddhism?
Oh hell no. Other than
Not a vegetarian or anything?
I think I'm a baconist. I think bacon is like the ultimate
If
food.
if there is a God, it made bacon, right?
Made bacon, right? Yeah, yeah. I don't just make 3 strips of bacon. Like I think that's a sin. And that's very sinful in my religion. I take like 4 pounds from Sam's Club and I fry the whole damn thing. I just sit there and eat it. But no, nothing like that. I am watching what I eat lately, and I'm getting more in tune with eating good things. And it seems like it makes me feel better, even if it doesn't. The act of doing it makes me feel better. To eat a little salad here and there with my bacon. But, interesting thing about Alan Watts is he drank like a fish, and he was considered a womanizer. He would get the pretty girls in front of the lecture, and he would go out with them, and he lived his life very fully. And he had an absolute love for wine, fine wines. He lived out in Sausalito, California, and for him, that was the path to enjoy, to feel those things, to drink that good wine, to eat that bacon, and that was, and of course there are other ways, like the Buddhism has an idea of different paths to where you want to go. Each of us will take a different path, and they're very light about which path you take. We used to talk about schools in Buddhism, and I don't think they judged each other in the same way that Christian denominations do. That no, you got it all wrong. They're like, oh well, that's your path. You can take the path of depriving yourself of everything, right? Cast off all your goods and live as a pauper, or you can choose the path of gluttony and go as far into it as you can. And either way, you're going to come out of the other end having had that mystical awakening.
A lot of the so-called Eastern religions are more inclusive.
Yeah,
They include everybody, whether you like it or not, and you can take it or leave it. Whereas, a lot of your so-called Western religions are, well, if you're not with us, you're against us, or you're not part of our group, but yeah, it is opposite, and I think they had a lot of misunderstandings when the different Western religions started intermixing, trying to explain things to these Eastern religions. And it goes back to the story of when the Native Americans sold Manhattan for some beads,
right.
and they said, "Oh, we sure got one over on them. We gave them some beads and whatever, some corn or whatever." And the natives went away laughing, saying, "Ha, ha, ha, these people think they can buy land.
Yeah, exactly. And we got beads.
If we got beads, yeah."
Beads. Yeah.
So that's all on how you look at it.
Yeah, there's even an idea that we came upon when during that year when I had that mystical experience the following year. My friend and I came upon this idea that you can adopt a belief like putting on a coat, like you put on a big parka, and then when you're done with it, you just cast it off. So we decided that we were going to become Catholics for summer, and so we became immersed in Catholicism for 3 months, and that was the closest I've ever been to Christianity. And we had the most amazing mystical experiences that summer. We'd be walking dark country roads, and a thunderstorm came up, and once we saw, oh my God, we call him Big Dad, God. Hey, there's Big Dad in the clouds, and the lightning was shining behind him, and we had intense mystical or spiritual. We had an intense spirituality that summer, and then in the fall we just said, okay, we're done with that, and we were no longer Catholics. Yeah, he was McCormick. He was an Irish Catholic, right? He was raised Irish Catholic, and so that's what we adopted. It was interesting. So you can adopt a belief as if it's a loose-fitting cloak. and that's how you hold it. And that goes to dogma. And that's why Hollywood Buddhism is so goddamn off the mark. It's so in the wrong direction of where you want to go. You do not want to cling to dogma because that's not the path. The path is to cast off dogma. So, and that's why I don't read about Buddhism and I don't know a lot about it. How to spell it, that's about the extent of it. And that's how you should be.
And I always have to think about where the H goes. I'm like, is the H?
Right. Yeah.
And I still do every time. I have to double check because I can still
Yeah.
spell it wrong.
When I first got into the wars about consciousness, spelling consciousness for some reason in my mind is always a bit, and I had to, it's like, God damn, I'm always spelling it wrong. Thank God for spell checkers. But here I was.
But then sometimes it works the opposite and it gives you the wrong one. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You can't. Some days you just can't win.
Yeah.
So, so how do you feel these days, Mike? Do you think that your well-being and everything is much better because of your secular Buddhism philosophies?
Yeah. The wonderful thing is when I was introduced to AA, I was introduced in handcuffs to AA, basically. Handcuffed in the back of a squad car. And I run into the 12 steps of AA, and I thought, oh my God, that sounds like the spiritual path that Buddhism talks about. Making amends and doing right things and turning your will and your life over, to the understanding that the universe is unfolding exactly as it should. The serenity prayer, all of that stuff. I'm like, oh my God, this AA is Buddhism. And so I never had a problem with the God words in AA, because I always interpreted it from the beginning as Buddhism. And so for the last 16 years, I have been religiously following the AA path, with making amends and trying to live that way. And it continues to change me, to erode away that negative thing that had clutched my life for so long and tried to ruin it. Because, of course, after my hippie youth, I got a job as a computer. I went and trained in electrical engineering and semiconductor electronics, and I ended up working at a computer store for my first job for a startup, and I ended up learning software and becoming really making a lot of money on consulting in software, and had a software company. So in my middle years, I completely strayed off the path. And part of straying off the path was that my life has been perforated with relatively short periods of time where I drink or take drugs. And it's called a slip. But for the most part, I've been sober about 80% of my life, sober in AA. But I've had extreme relapses, and that evil clutching me, that negativity clutching me. And AA has a path called 12 steps, which are very much like the eight Buddhist things that can relieve you of that horrible clutching thing that darkens your life. And my life is getting lighter more and more and more as I go on. And I thought I was going to die in 2007 when I sobered up. And everybody, in fact, that knew me thought that I had less than 6 months to live. Doctors told me that I had permanently damaged my nervous system and I'd never recover. And here I am, 16 years of just absolute wonderful life later. And it keeps getting better. And it's all from following that path. Yeah. I mean, that is incredible. What a gift. I mean, and I am so grateful for that. That's why I started counting the days. It's like, oh my God, you're going to give me another day. Another day. The universe is offering me up another day.
And sometimes when I think about people, friends and my brother not being around anymore, and I kind of say, well, I've got to be here and live another day for them that they didn't get, So
Yeah, and that's the other thing is that that hippie group back, my soulmate, from school, and the only person I have left is Lynn, and she was there were five of us out there on the farm, during the psychedelic hippie days. And I'm the last one alive of that group. Steve Peterson just passed away, I think, yeah, last year in April, and I'm the last one there. But all of them, the way I make sense of that is their story unfolded and their story was written, and they put the back of the book on. They wrote the end. The back of the book came on, and then the credits, right, where we do their eulogy at the funeral, right at the back. And now they're a whole. They have a whole story and narrative. And my narrative is I'm still busy unfolding it and writing it. But these others are like, okay, that is like if I grieve them and say, oh no, they should still be around, in some way I'm dishonoring the totality of their narrative of their life. Somehow the whole of them is being denied if I grieve their death, if I grieve that passing. And I'm going to play. That, that's a weird concept, but it's how I have to deal with grief. Basically, it's this idea that this is the end of the book. When you go to that funeral, you put that cover on. You can look at that whole narrative, and that's it. Sometimes you look at somebody you've lost and you think, God, is that all there is? And it's like, well, think about every single moment of every day of that person's life and how much they loved, how much bacon they had, for instance.
Yeah, like you say, certain things just take you right back. You get that smell of something, and it just,
Yeah,
or that song,
that
or
longing.
just whatever it is. And yeah, that old TV show theme music comes on that
Yeah,
always reminds me of when I got to stay up late and watch Carol Burnett and stuff at Grandma's
yeah,
house. And yeah, just bam, it just hits you just so, and
yeah,
just for that moment, yeah, you're just wow, and that feeling is great, but it is fleeting.
yeah, yeah. Going out to the lake, at somebody's house, and we'd always use the sauna as a changing room, and there'd be the smell of cedar, and and that dampness of the sauna, and then it's just like, and that longing is this bittersweet. It's not just totally bad or bitter, otherwise we wouldn't recollect. Right? We're experiencing again and bringing a piece of it back into our present, and and nostalgia is very bittersweet. It's like Christmas, which is a mix, right? There's green and red. There's the darker colors and the brighter colors, the twinkly lights, and the backdrop of deep red and dark green. It's all bittersweet, and when you get used to that, you can imbibe of life at a much higher level. You can tolerate a higher level of awareness when you become accustomed to enjoying the bittersweet as well. It's kind of like acquiring a taste for slightly edgy or bitter chocolate or dry wine. You expand your taste to include those feelings too. And rather than sit around and whining about them, oh, I feel nostalgic. I feel, poor me, poor me. You say, no, I feel nostalgia. This is wonderful. I remember.
So if you could do it all over again, would you rather have your life as it was until you discovered your secular Buddhism, or would you rather have had your secular Buddhism in your youth?
I would have done everything exactly the same except for one thing. We got drunk the weekend Woodstock happened and we missed it. I would have made Woodstock. That's the only thing I changed in
Fair
my life.
enough.
Yeah, kind of regret
And
that.
I don't want to mention anything about Mike's age, but
72.
Mike has many years of wisdom and experiences. So, to the younger viewers that might be out there, Mike, what would you say to them about secular Buddhism?
What would I say? It's one of the things that you could choose, and it would serve you well if you did. But it's up to you. Either way, doesn't matter. You're all going to find your path. You're going to write your own story. It's all going to turn out, as your story. The universe is going to unfold for you the way it should. If you're interested, definitely read Alan Watts. Hopefully, if you're an atheist, do not try to read in any spiritual bullshit into his words. Listen to what he's really saying about life, and it's kind of a wonderful way to live. So I'm 72 and I'm 26,402 days old, and this could be my last day. This could be the day, and it would be a wonderful. It would be wonderful to have that number, to have that label, and say, that's a number of a man down. Yeah, embrace it if you want. If you don't, bullshit. Yeah. Please don't think that it's Hollywood Buddhism and it has anything to do with this karma or coming back as a snake or reincarnation or any of the mythical, statues that they use to meditate with or in any way, any kind of a supernatural element. My God, do not besmirch the religion with that kind of bullshit. It's not dogma. Anti-dogma. Youth be youth. They do what they do.
Well, let's take a look and see at the chat here real quick.
Yeah.
Say hi to everybody.
Don't know if we got any questions.
Let's see. We got Sandals is here, and Chris Moore, and Melody Joy, and Look at the Trees, and Mr. Scott Duke. Always good to see you.
Oh, that guy. He turned 666 the other day.
Yes, he did. Yeah. That's why you were having tech issues the other day.
Yeah, we got James and Carrie Ann Chrysler's awake.
Carrie Ann, James.
Okay, Carrie Ann, now that you're awake, you must wake up. Now that you're out of bed.
Scott Duke.
Big Bad Mama. Oh, it's
how lucky.
It's 420.
Oh, yeah. Don't forget, tonight is Randolph's special for I forgot the title. Some about 420 day anyways. I think it's at 8 tonight or something.
Got in illegal trouble for starting a marijuana plantation or something like that.
So Scott says, how lucky does Speed feel for having such a brilliant, charming, and engaging co-host these many years?
Oh, I'm just so grateful, Scott, that I've had this wonderful trumpet playing, beautiful beard, wonderful hats, been with me. So grateful. But,
Scott does have a righteous beard.
But Scott, I think you missed the fucking point. It's not supposed to be about you. Me. Yeah. Anyway, Scott is my partner on the channel. And, a good one.
Yep. We always enjoy Scott, and
we've been bringing James Apperson in lately, and he is amazing. And I love when he monologues, and goes. And that man can write prose out loud or on paper without stopping, without lifting the pen.
It free flows too. It's amazing.
Yeah, free flows. Yeah. And I appreciate all my channel members and the people that come around and hang out with us. It's just amazing that like 25 of them will stop in and listen to us. And it's like, what the hell are you listening to us for? It's like,
it's a good time. It's a good time, and we learn something along the way. Mike has a lot of scientists on, and so you just might learn something. So.
I need to get back into that more. I'm on this philosophy tangent, I'm fighting with other physicalists about physicalism, which is fun.
Don't say. James said he developed a philosophy around it that turned that negative into a positive. That's what you have to do. Yeah,
and that's the thing. If you live your life like that, or like if you live your life in sort of in a selfless manner, yourself ends up getting served more than anybody else. I mean, you end up just feeling at peace, you know. And if you go the other way, you know, resentment is a poison that you give to somebody else, hoping that they'll die, or that you drink yourself, hoping that somebody else will die, which makes a whole lot of sense, you know, when you have resentment. I'm really so pissed off that person that cut me off in traffic. And the truth of it is that that other person doesn't even remember you. And you're sitting there, you know, just pissed off for hours and hours. And your arteries are stretching and hardening, you know, and it's not doing any goddamn good. So resentment is a poison you drink yourself, hoping somebody else will die, which is pretty dumb.
Yep.
So,
And Deconverted Man is here.
yeah.
We're gonna have a talk next Thursday, so catch that next Thursday. We'll have a lively discussion with Deconverted Man. So I was on his channel, and he's gonna come on mine for this time around. So be prepared, and don't open his links.
Oh, really?
Right, Mike?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. No, never.
Don't open his links.
Especially the lemon links. Don't open the lemon links. Oh my God, I'm permanently scarred from that. So Sandal says that I say sauna the right way. I grew up around a bunch of Finlanders. There were Finlanders and Polacks is what we had. We would tell Finnish jokes, and they would tell Polak jokes, but they never said them out loud, so we never knew that. We just thought they were Finnish jokes. And my dad was the one of the few Polacks that had a sauna. Mojaka. Fish head soup. That's a treat when you're a young man. Mojaka.
What's the canned fish that they that's so ripe that they do in all the videos?
Oh, I can't remember. Yes. They have festivals.
That stuff, yeah, that's so foul. They have to open it outside. They won't open it indoors.
Yeah, there were certain Finnish traditions I stayed far away from, and that was one of them.
acquired taste.
Yeah, well, I remember when I was a little boy, you know, we went over to Viennano's place, and they sat me down and said, "Have some soup and some mojaka." Oh my God, it smells great. And then I eating this wonderful, you know, kind of like really rich soup, and then I pull up a fish at it. I'm like, oh fuck. What does mojaka mean?
I was enjoying it right up until that moment.
Right.
Hey, Big Bad Mama, happy 420 everyone. Good to see you, Big Bad Mama.
Yeah.
And Chris says, yeah, Speed was talking about Christianity borrowing some Buddhist teachings. Yeah, it's like I say, it's historic. You could say it's historically that, and right through up till the Europeans and everybody else were always trying to find the trade routes quicker to India to get all the spices and everything. So obviously there was a lot of trade going back a very long time. So
yeah, they brought home all the spice. You know.
Yeah.
Ideas.
And let's see.
Calacia 789 fermented fish surströmming. Oh, we used to make that. It was my dad used to put a big, huge 5-gallon crocks of this pickled fish. Which was really good.
Well, here's a question: how do hierarchies work in Buddhism?
I have no idea. Pieces and wholes and Mariology. I'm not sure.
Well, I know there's different. There are different levels between what like everyday practitioners do and what monks and other people do. There's different levels of practice, and that it's understood that not everybody can be a monk, right, because somebody has to do all the other stuff too. So,
talking about the caste system, basically, that they have an Indian.
Now there is a Hinduism caste
Yeah.
problem, but I don't know if it really. I guess it surfaces a little in Buddhism.
Yeah. Yeah, just say it.
And let's see.
Then used to
Scott's
evolve.
gonna.
Yes.
And Colossi is here. Jason Jacoby's here.
Well, in modern day Christianity, I think there's a lot of genetic entropy obvious that it's slowly falling apart, slowly going the other way.
And Bree
Yes.
stopping by. Hello,
I
Bree. Good
agree.
to see you.
This famous overland trade route in history was named after Moss. Wow. Bring a little bug into it, there, Bree.
Bree's always learning us something.
Learning us something.
Well, that looks
Yeah.
like I said. I think that's everybody in the chat. And hey, great to see everybody.
Oh, you got any other questions about all of that? Does that all make? Did it do a whole?
Mostly it was a lot of highs and hellos in the chat. So you must have answered the questions so well.
I'm so good. Yeah,
You're
so
just so
clear.
good. And yeah, we did such an awesome job that they got it loud and clear, and there's just not any confusion. So I mean, hey,
You're all
what
on
more
their
can
way
you
to
ask for?
the. Yeah.
Well, on that note, I kept you about. We wanted to talk about an hour, and I think it was a great talk. And there's plenty of information out there if you want to find out about secular Buddhism. Mike recommended some sources, and there's a lot of others out there. Quick
Yeah.
Google search or an Amazon search will bring up plenty of information if you want to look it up.
If you search for Ellen Watts on YouTube or anywhere, Ellen Watts has more spoken words recorded, I heard one time, than any other person in history. And that was as of like the year 2000 or something like that. Because he had a radio show every night in California and he would just record everything. So, and he would give talk after talk. So if you want to know about Ellen Watts, and he has some wonderful books that are just written with, they're written with a chuckle all the time. They're just humorous. And he takes a real humorous look at Christianity, particularly in the book Beyond Theology, where he takes a look at the meta of Christianity and religion, and it's pretty cool. But if you're interested in that path or that way of life, that is one. Just look up Ellen Watts and listen to him, and keep the wool out of your head.
Oh, and AR stopped by. Hello, AR. How you doing, brother?
Yeah.
And Bree said she was late, but hey, we're always glad to see you, Bree. Thanks for stopping through.
Yep.
Okay, and Mike, what's coming up on your channel before we take off here? Anything planned or?
I'm going to try to double down on my scientism and talking about physicalism. That's planned. I have a bunch of people that wrote papers that I've been ignoring, scientists that I should have on again. And of course, our schedules never align, but hopefully we can get back to a little of that. And I have just a ton of stuff we want to talk about in embryology and biology in general. And nothing particular coming up other than that we're going to bring James in, and Scott and I are going to talk about physicalism some more, so I can try to explain what the hell I'm thinking. So, okay.
Oh, and Bree did say she wanted to ask about veganism. I did ask Mike. Mike's not a vegan or a vegetarian, and neither am I. But Buddhism, depending which way you look at it, you can be vegetarian, or they have rules that allow certain kinds of meat to be eaten, but not others. So
Yeah, and there's an interesting, there are interesting practices like walking through the woods without moving any branches. You dart around the branches and you flow through them, and without stepping on anything or killing anything. So you find the path of least harm, that sort of thing. And if you do that for a few hours, it really is, you feel kind of light and pleasant. You feel like you have the wind blowing through the trees. But that's as close as I would come to veganism. I grew up on a farm where we delivered meat as a product, basically. So I'm pretty far. And there's something beautiful in that too, because I embrace that carnivore lifestyle where you love and raise your cows, and one day you eat them, and it just all seems to be part of the wonderful karmic wheel. It all makes sense to me.
Well, okay, we covered all that. And I wanted to
Yep.
mention, yeah, you can find the link to Mike's channel in the description down below there,
Okay.
and his contact info too. If you want to get a hold of him about something, I put that all in the description.
Yep.
And thank you, Mike, for an interesting discussion about secular Buddhism. Thank you to
Okay.
those joining in the chat. Appreciate everybody.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy discussions like these, subscribe with a bell to get notifications for future videos. And I will see you then.
Okay. Bye, guys.